One student gets a completely failing grade, and the other secures top band marks in the Cambridge Information Technology 9626 exam. Can you spot the difference? Today, we are decoding the absolute ultimate exam strategy for one of the most notoriously tricky topics on the syllabus, validation methods. If you've ever felt like you completely knew the material but still dropped marks in the exam, you are absolutely not alone. We're going to fix that right now in this explainer.
All right, look closely at these two student answers on validation checks. Go ahead, pause and predict which one wins the marks and which one completely destroys the grade boundary. On the left, we have a student who perfectly defines a limit check. They say it checks data boundaries. Sounds pretty good, right? But on the right, the student doesn't just regurgitate a definition, they apply the limit check directly to the specific case study scenario provided in the exam, referencing the exact fields and parameters. Spoiler alert, the answer on the left gets minimal marks. The one on the right, that's your top band A grade answer. So what's actually going on here? It reveals exactly why ordinary revision fails so hard. Students spend hours memorizing terms, reading textbook definitions, making flashcards, but they completely miss the application. This quote is pulled directly from the principal examiner reports. They are explicitly telling us, quote, candidates consistently confuse key terminology and use the wrong approach for the wrong context. Knowing what a validation check is simply isn't enough anymore. You have to know precisely when and how to deploy it within the unique scenario of the exam question. Let's lock in a massive quick win right now by clearly distinguishing our three core validation methods so you never confuse this crucial terminology again. First, the lookup check. Think of this as your drop-down menu scenario. It verifies data against a strict, predefined list of acceptable values. Second is the consistency check. This is your data detective. It compares data in two or more fields to make sure they logically make sense together. And third, the limit check, which ensures data falls within a specific, acceptable numerical or date range. Hardwiring these definitions into your brain is step one. Step two is avoiding these top three fatal mistakes lifted straight from the examiner reports. Mistake number one is using the wrong approach for the wrong context, like suggesting a lookup check when a limit check was blatantly needed for an age field. Mistake number two is just forgetting to check the format and presentation of the data entirely. And mistake number three, the ultimate grade killer, is giving generic answers that are not specific to the context given in the paper. Listen, if your answer could apply to any database in the world, you are losing marks.
Now, in just a moment, I'm going to show you the exact context clue examiners look for that changes a validation answer completely, shifting it from a C to an A. But first, you need the technical framework that makes that clue absolutely obvious when you're sitting in the exam hall under intense time pressure. Because once you understand the methodology the examiners are actually grading you on, these questions stop being traps and start becoming incredibly easy marks. Which brings us to Section 1, the technical methodology, systematic processing. To spot that context clue, we have to adopt the method mark strategy. You see, the theoretical architecture of this syllabus rests heavily on systematic analysis. Examiners want to see your brain working on the page, and they actually award you marks just for your procedural framework, even if your final conclusion isn't totally perfect. This sequence brilliantly illustrates exactly how top-scoring candidates systematically process any validation question they face. First, they deconstruct the question to identify the core command words. Next, they extract the relevant data from the text or tables provided. Then, they select their analytical framework. Fourth, they execute their analysis with crystal-clear notation so the examiner can easily follow their logic. And finally, they present their answer using the strictly correct syllabus terminology. This is the deconstruct, solve, evaluate pipeline in action. And let's see how this builds into the ultimate high-mark framework, PEAL-J. Point, evidence, explanation, link, judgment. When the assessment objectives target application and analysis, you absolutely cannot just list facts. You make your point, you back it up with evidence from the provided table, you provide an explanation of how the validation rule works, you link it back to the specific business context, and you offer a judgment on its effectiveness. This framework guarantees you demonstrate the evaluative thinking and justified reasoning the Cambridge syllabus demands. Let's put this into practice in Section 2. Interactive challenge, spot the error. Now it is your turn to step into the shoes of the examiner and apply this systematic processing to a much harder Cambridge-style scenario. Carefully examine this extracted data table and see if you can deconstruct the validation errors hidden inside. Look closely. We have an age field that seems to have some wild, totally unrealistic numbers in it, and a date of birth field right next to it with wildly inconsistent formatting. Look at the relationships between these fields. Think about the three core checks we just discussed. lookup, consistency, and limit.
I want you to pause this explainer right now. Formulate your own answer and predict how the examiner will grade it. And don't just think limit check. I want you to literally structure it in your head using the PLJ framework. What is the specific context? What is your evidence from the table? How would you justify a recommendation to the examiner? Commit to an answer before we move on.
Okay, here is the examiner-style feedback. If you just said, use a limit check for the age, you got a lower band mark. To get the top band marks, you needed to identify that a limit check was missing for the age field, and you needed to spot the missing consistency check between the date of birth and the age. I mean, someone born in 2010 can't be 45 years old, right? If you didn't link the checks to the specific context of those two interacting fields, or if your answer lacked that critical PELJ justification, you've unfortunately lost the top band marks. So we've successfully cracked the code on validation methods. You have the deconstruct, solve, evaluate pipeline, and the PLJ framework in your toolkit. But here is the harsh reality of the Cambridge 9626 syllabus. We've just solved the validation problem. But if you don't know the specific, fatal mistakes students are making across the rest of the syllabus, your grade is still entirely at risk. There are massive traps hiding in networking, in database normalization, and in data analysis. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Ace the Exams, at @aceexams_IGCSE to excel in your Cambridge examinations. And click the explainer on screen right now to unlock the rest of the explainer report traps you absolutely must avoid. We will go through the exact phrasing that ruins A grades in those other topics. But before you go, honestly ask yourself, if you miss the validation errors today, how many top band marks are currently slipping through the cracks in your networking answers? Click over right now to find out, and I'll see you there.